Hello, I'm Gordon Lang, editor of CameraLabs.com. I'd like to give you a brief video tour around the Canon EOS 550D. Here it is, the 550D, or as it's known in North America, the Rebel T2i. Now numerically that makes it the successor to the EOS 500D, or Rebel T1i, although both models should coexist in Canon's range, at least while stocks last of the older one. Now depending on where you're based, the EOS 550D or T2i should be available in a variety of different lens kits, the most common being the EFS 18 to 55mm IS. Alternatively, some other regions may offer it with the EFS 18 to 135mm IS, and that's what I've got mounted on the camera right here. Now this is a great option to go for if you're after something with a bit more magnification. Both lenses start with the same equivalent wide angle coverage, but this one zooms more than 2.5 times closer. Alternatively, if you want something much classier from day one, why not bundle this with the EFS 15 to 85mm, a really high quality lens with very wide angle coverage. Now I've got full reviews of both of these lenses at CameraLabs.com and full comparisons with the basic EFS 18 to 55mm, so if you want to decide which lens is going to be best for you, head on over and check them out. But now let's get on with the review of the 550D, which as you can see externally greatly resembles its predecessor, but inside there's some very important changes and at least one rather special one round the back. Let's take a closer look. I'll start as always with resolution, and the headline feature here is an upgrade from the 15 megapixels of the 500D or T1i to exactly the same 18 megapixel resolution as the high-end EOS 7D. Now it's important to note that the resolution may be the same, but the sensor is not. Now the sensor readout on the 550D or T2i is not as quick as the 7D, and that coupled with slower image processing and also a slower physical mechanism inside the body itself means that it can't shoot anywhere near as quickly, but the resolution is exactly the same as the 7D. The sensitivity range is the same as well. It goes from 100 to 12,800 ISO, and if you'd like to see sample images of exactly how that looks for both JPEGs and RAW files, then head on over to my full review at CameraLabs.com. The major physical change on the 550D or T2i concerns the screen round the back. It's still the same 3 inches as the 500D or T1i before it, but you'll notice that it's now slightly wider. It now actually matches the 3:2 aspect ratio of the pictures recorded by the camera. So this means that whether you're composing in live view as I'm doing right now, or playing back your images, they will actually fill the screen rather than appearing with little black bars above and below. The resolution has also been slightly increased to 1040p pixels, and this coupled with the fact that the images now fill the screen means they look a lot more detailed than before. It's a first for any Canon DSLR or even most DSLRs on the market, and it's a great upgrade for the 550D or T2i. It's also worth noting that when you're composing in the movie mode, the 16:9 HD modes also fill more of that screen. There'll still be some black bars above and below when you're composing and playing back, but they're a lot thinner than before. Staying on the subject of movies, video is the next big upgrade for the EOS 550D or T2i. Before I go any further, I'll point out that you're actually watching an example of one right now. I'm stood about 1 meter in front of the camera, and the sound you hear is that recorded by its built-in mono microphone. Although I should also point out that one of the great features of this camera is the ability to connect an external microphone for better sound quality. That's a really cool thing to have in a camera at this price point. Now onto the actual video modes themselves. Impressively, the 550D or T2i actually inherits the same video modes as the high-end EOS 7D. That means you get a choice of 720p at 50 or 60 frames per second, or 1080p at 24, 25 or 30 frames per second. You also get a couple of standard definition VGA modes. In addition, you get the choice of fully automatic or manual exposures, and if you choose the latter, you can actually select the aperture and shutter speed that you're after. It's a pretty impressive package, so now let's take a look at some examples of how you might use it. This first clip was filmed with a 550D or T2i mounted on a tripod and smoothly panning from left to right, and if you're watching this in 720 or 1080p you'll see the images packed with detail. I should however note that I switched back to my camcorder and external microphone for recording the audio for these clips. Now it is possible to zoom the lens while filming by simply twisting the zoom ring on your lens, and this clip demonstrates the 7.5 times range of the 18 to 135mm kit lens. You can see it gets much closer than the standard 18 to 55, and if you're filming it also allows you to perform crash zooms in and out. This next clip was filmed in the manual mode of the camera, and here I've selected the maximum f5.6 aperture, again on the 18 to 135mm lens, and you can see how at this close focusing distance it's allowed me to very selectively focus from one area to another. This is an effect that's very difficult to achieve with a normal camcorder. Here's one of the standard definition modes shooting 640 by 480 pixels, that's why it looks fuzzier than the earlier high definition clips, but keep an eye on the boats in the middle. New to the 550D T2i is the movie crop feature, and that's what you're seeing right now. Now this still shoots standard definition, but it only records the 640 by 480 pixels in the very middle of the sensor. It's thereby cropping the image and acting like a 7.2 times zoom. To better illustrate this, here's a clip of the moon filmed with the 18 to 135mm fully zoomed in and working at an equivalent of 216mm. Now even then it looks tiny, so it's an ideal candidate for the movie crop function. And here's what you get when the camera is only recording the 640 by 480 pixels in the very middle of the sensor. Again, it's acting like a 7.2 times enlargement, and that means we're working at an equivalent of 1555mm. Now sadly the movie crop is not available in high definition, but it remains a fun way of getting really close to the action in standard definition. And finally, one more high definition clip, again filming the 18 to 135. Now the camera can autofocus while filming, but it's too slow to be practical, so this clip and all the ones prior to it were all manually focused. A fourth new feature on the 550D or T2i is an unexpected upgrade to its metering system. If you select evaluative metering, you'll now be using the same 63-zone ICFL system as the EOS 7D. And in use we found that was a lot more confident, especially when you're faced with some tricky lighting situations. We found very few occasions when you'd want to apply exposure compensation. Externally, the 550D or T2i greatly resembles its predecessor. Indeed, from the front you'd really need to check out their logos here to identify them. However, look around the body and some differences do emerge. On the upper right side you'll notice the command mode dial here is now coloured black, like the earlier 450D or XSI. You'll still find a dedicated button to adjust the ISO sensitivity though. Looking towards the back of the camera you'll notice the bigger differences. That big 3:2 aspect ratio screen that I told you about earlier in the video, and now a new dedicated button here to enter live view. If you're in the movie mode, this button is also used to start and stop recording. You also notice here a slight redesign on these buttons. They're larger and more angular than before. If I switch off the camera I can show you the ports. On the right hand side of the body, of course, an SD memory card slot. However, what's new here is the 550D or T2i can take the latest SDXC memory cards for capacities bigger than 32GB. Do take note though that if you want to support the full movie capabilities of this camera, you'll need to equip it with a card rated as Class 6 or faster. Below the camera, the battery compartment is exactly where it was before, but it's a brand new battery, so if you're upgrading from the 500D or T1i, unfortunately you won't be able to use the same batteries, and likewise, not the same battery grip either. And finally, on the left hand side of the body, let's check out the ports behind this flap here. The most important new one here being the external microphone input at the top for the movie mode. Although as before, you also get a standard definition TV output and an HDMI port for high definition slideshows on compatible TVs. Continuous shooting is slightly quicker than before. It's up from the 3.4 frames per second of the 500D or T1i to 3.7 frames per second here. Now if you fit a sufficiently fast card, you should be able to keep shooting JPEG images until you run out of memory, but unfortunately the RAW buffer has dropped from 9 frames to just 6, so if you're into shooting continuously with RAW, you'll probably get a little bit frustrated with this camera. Here's how that 3.7 frames per second sounds. Here's a fast action sequence I took with the 550D or T2i using its continuous drive mode and continuous autofocus. The camera had no problem tracking the subject as it came towards me at high speed, but the burst mode just wasn't really quick enough to capture as many frames as I wanted for this kind of situation. It also stalled a little bit towards the end of the sequence. So if you're into shooting very fast action and you take that kind of subject very seriously, you may be better off buying a different camera. Now let's take a look at the live view features on the 550D or T2i. Now in one of the changes from the earlier 500D T1i, we now have a dedicated live view button to the right of the viewfinder, and you press that and you're in live view straight away. And to prove that, as always, I'll wiggle my fingers in front of the camera's lens. The other thing you'll notice here is the live image actually filling the screen without any black bars. That's thanks to the 3:2 aspect ratio of the screen. Now let's press the display button to overlay various graphics. First of all, some basic shooting information at the bottom. Next, some settings running down the side, and I'll show you how we can change those more easily than before in just a moment. And finally there, a live histogram in the top right corner. Again, if I wiggle my fingers here, you can see that adjusting. Press the display button once more and we go back to the clean view. If you want an alignment grid, you'll need to go into the main menu system. Here into the live view function settings, we're going to enable the grid. And there it is. Again, I'll make that clearer by just putting my fingers in front of the lens. I'm going to switch that grid off. Now going back to those display options, I'm going to show you how we can change some of these settings. This is new to the 550D or T2i over its predecessor. Press the Q menu button here and you'll see you can actually highlight these options on the left. And then you can use the finger dial to adjust these. Here I'm adjusting the white balance setting. I can go down and directly adjust the image quality. And alternatively at the bottom here I can actually change the autofocus mode, and this gives me a good opportunity to actually demonstrate the autofocus in live view. The default option is the AF Live mode. This is a contrast based system, although there's one other important change from its predecessor. You no longer have to learn which button to press on the back of the camera, you just half press the shutter release to autofocus in live view. Thanks for that, Canon, we've been waiting ages for it. So there you saw it took a couple of seconds, but it was pretty quiet and there was no interruption to the image. If I press the Q menu button, we can see the other options. Here the live mode with face detection, and here the quick mode. Now this uses the traditional phase change autofocus system. Let's see how that works in practice. I'll half press the shutter release. And you saw there the 9-point AF system overlaid on the screen and the active focus points illuminated red. Now that mode has the potential to be a bit quicker, but again it's a little bit noisier and there is an interruption to the image. Let's now go back to AF Live mode. The next thing to show you here is the magnified focusing assistance, and as before, to enter that you just press the magnified button here. Now this allows me to then use these cross keys to move around the image at a magnified view and take a closer look. Here I am at 5 times and now at 10 times. And if I press the shutter release button to autofocus now, we can see a very precise representation of what's going on there. This magnified view also makes it easy to make precision manual focusing adjustments. To do that, I'm just going to switch the lens to manual focus. And now if I grab the manual focusing ring at the end of the lens barrel, you can see there the image going in and out of focus. And that's pretty close there. Now some people doubt the value of live view, but for me this magnified view taken from the actual sensor itself is incredibly useful. It allows you to ensure that the image is absolutely in focus. It's great whether you're doing macro photography, as I'm doing here, astrophotography perhaps with a camera connected to a telescope, or even if you're doing a landscape shot mounted on a tripod, you can just magnify that view and ensure that the image is absolutely spot on. Like other recent Canon DSLRs, the EOS 550D or Rebel T2i is supplied with free software that allows you to remote control it with your PC or Mac. I'm running it here under Windows Vista. Yes, I know I should have upgraded to Windows 7 by now, but I've just been too busy reviewing cameras for you guys. Anyways, before it allows you to remote control the camera over the supplied USB cable and change pretty much any setting from your computer that doesn't require a physical flick of a switch or turn of a dial. As before, if I half press the virtual shutter release by moving the mouse pointer over it, you'll hear the camera autofocus and confirm with a double beep, and you'll also see the metered exposure here. And then when I want to take the picture, I just press that button. And that picture is now recorded to either your computer's hard disk, your camera's memory card, or to both at the same time. And you'll see here this whopping number of pictures, even in RAW mode, that the camera can take. That's because I'm recording them to my PC's hard disk where there's plenty of room. Now moving down to this section here, you'll see a number of options that are greyed out. For example, P here, the program mode. I can't change that from the remote control software because that would actually require me to turn the dial. However, pretty much everything else is fair game. I can adjust the white balance here, let's put it to auto. The ISO sensitivity, let's take that down to 100 ISO. Let's change the quality to just large fine JPEGs. So it's great to be able to just remote control all of these settings and then see them reflected here. It's now saying because I've switched to JPEG mode I can shoot 6,000 shots on my computer. But as before, the most exciting thing about this software is actually being able to see on your computer screen what your camera is pointing at, and that's using the remote live view setting here. I'm going to go to live view shoot, and as the camera initializes that, I'm going to zoom my camcorder out so we can get a proper view of what the software is going to do. Okay, now the picture you see here on the screen is actually what the camera's pointed at right now. I'm just going to move over to the camera and wiggle my fingers in front of the lens and watch the live histogram in the bottom right corner adjust. I've got the lens zoomed in quite a lot there for a close-up view of the mountain ridge. That's why my fingers weren't really in focus there. But as before, I can focus on the image remotely just by clicking this on button here. That was the live mode in action. Again, that's a contrast-based system, but if I prefer, I could choose the quick mode here, which uses the traditional phase change system. Notice how those 9 autofocus pointers have appeared. Now if I click on, you'll see there a brief interruption to the image and some noise, and you'll also see those active focusing points illuminated in red. I'm going to switch that back to live mode and show you another rather neat feature of this software. I can actually take a magnified look at the ridge here by clicking this magnifying icon here. I move this window over so we can take a closer look. I can use these arrows to move around the picture here until I see an area of interest. Let's take a close look at this part here. And I can actually manually focus the lens using these controls here. I can throw it way out of focus there and then gradually bring it back in again. I'm quite close now, so I'm just going to fine tune this. Gone a bit too much that way. There we go, that's pretty much perfect. So that's actually giving the magnified focus assistance, but remotely over your computer. That's pretty neat. New to this version of the EOS utility is the ability to actually fire up the movie mode. So I'm going to show you how that works. Now I'm going to zoom in again here, close this option, go back to the main EOS utility window here, and you'll notice this movie icon here. When I press this, the camera is now automatically put into movie mode. I'll zoom back out again so you can take a closer look. Okay, now if I want to start recording, I can simply click this record button in the bottom left hand corner of the screen. And there the camera is now actually recording video, and you can see these grey bars here indicating the 16:9 frame. Now unfortunately this time the movies are actually recorded only to your camera's memory card. They're not recorded to your computer's hard disk, but at least you can trigger that process remotely. Now I know many of you will already have seen this software in action before, perhaps even demonstrated on one of my previous video tours, but it's important to remember that it's a fairly unique feature of owning a Canon DSLR. You can get remote control software with other cameras, but you normally have to pay for it. It's an optional extra, whereas Canon actually throws it in free of charge with all of its DSLRs, even the most affordable models. The EOS 550D or Rebel T2i perfectly illustrates Canon's strategy and priorities for its entry-level DSLR range. The sensor and movie capabilities have both been upgraded to match the best model in the crop range at the time I made this video, making the 550D or T2i essentially a mini EOS 7D, at least in terms of resolution and video anyway. So if these are your priorities, it's a very exciting camera. But in other respects, the camera stood still. What you won't find here is improved build quality, faster continuous shooting, a superior viewfinder or autofocus system, or even an articulated screen. Canon's clearly saying that if you want faster shooting and tougher build, then go for one of its semi-pro models. That's how it differentiates them in its range. And that's fine if you're only looking within the Canon system, but it has opened up some opportunities for rivals. For example, Nikon's aging D5000, it's had an articulated screen for ages, and Sony's also stepped in by offering some fast continuous shooting options at an affordable price point. So if these things are important to you, then perhaps you should be looking at a different system. However, once again, if resolution and video modes are your priority, the 550D or T2i won't disappoint. Now, of course, you want to see some more examples of those movie modes. You want to be able to download some sample videos to play on your own computer, and of course, check out the image quality for yourself and see exactly how it compares to some rival models. To do that, head on over to my full review at cameralabs.com. There you'll find sample images, results comparing the 550D or T2i against some rival models, and again those video clips that you can download to check out for yourself. You'll find it all at cameralabs.com.